The U.S. State Department is telling Americans in Mexico to shelter in place as law enforcement tries to regain control of cities that have fallen into chaos in the hands of the Mexican cartels.
Well, I'm talking to a lot of people, a lot of my sources on the ground in Mexico, and it's essentially pure chaos. As you can see from the images there's burning, there's rioting, there's attacks. I mean, it is all-out warfare in certain parts of Mexico.
The cartels thought they were untouchable. They shot down military helicopters, assassinated police chiefs, and ran billion-dollar drug empires right under the government's nose. For years, Mexico watched. For years, they waited. That's over now. The Mexican Navy just dropped the hammer. A cartel drug lab wiped completely off the map in a single strike. And this isn't a one-time raid. This is Mexico's military hitting back harder than ever before, and the cartels are starting to feel it. They started this war. Mexico just decided to finish it. Here's how. Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, born into poverty in Michoacan, he immigrated illegally to California, got deported, and came back to build a criminal empire that would eventually span all 50 U.S. states. His cartel, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, became Mexico's most aggressive and fastest-growing criminal organization. The DEA considered them as powerful as El Chapo's Sinaloa cartel. They flooded the U.S. with fentanyl and methamphetamine. They shot down military helicopters. They used weaponized drones, tactics straight out of the Ukraine war, to bomb rival territories and kill government officials. In 2020, they tried to assassinate Mexico City's police chief in broad daylight with grenades and high-powered rifles. On February 22, 2026, the Mexican Air Force and the National Guard's Immediate Reaction Special Forces moved on a compound in Tapalpa, Jalisco, El Mencho's home territory. The raid was the result of months of intensified intelligence sharing between Mexico and the United States. But no American boots touched Mexican soil. This was Mexico's operation, Mexico's soldiers, Mexico's risk. CJNG fighters engaged the raiding force immediately. 4 cartel members were killed. 3 were critically wounded. El Mencho himself was shot and mortally wounded during the firefight. He died en route to Mexico City. Former DEA Chief of International Operations Mike Vigil called it one of the most significant actions in the entire history of drug trafficking. But CJNG wasn't going down quietly. Within hours, CJNG members had erected over 250 roadblocks across 20 Mexican states, burning vehicles, blocking highways, shutting down cities. Guadalajara went into lockdown. Schools across multiple states were canceled. Supermarkets and pharmacies were torched. 25 National Guard soldiers were killed in 6 separate attacks in Jalisco alone. President Claudia Sheinbaum told the country to stay calm. Jalisco's governor activated a code red, a full state of emergency. This is the brutal reality of decapitation strategy. When you cut off the head, the body doesn't die quietly. It thrashes. And right now, Mexico is feeling every convulsion. So is this a victory? Absolutely. El Mencho was one of the biggest drug capos in the history of global trafficking. Under President Sheinbaum, Mexico has dismantled over 1,600 drug labs and handed nearly 100 cartel suspects to the U.S. But analysts warn, rival cartels will move fast to claim CJNG's territory. Labs get rebuilt in days. The war continues. Somewhere deep in the Mexican jungle, a drug lab the size of a small town was cranking out drugs that were killing Americans every single day. This wasn't some backyard operation. They were operating from a billion-dollar facility with concrete bunkers, armed guards, and enough security to make a military base jealous. The cartel bosses running this place thought they were completely safe, hidden under thick jungle canopy where satellites couldn't spot them and law enforcement couldn't touch them. Then one morning the sky exploded, and in just 15 minutes, their entire empire turned to rubble. How was the U.S. Navy able to perform this covert operation? And what aircraft was used in wiping out the drug lab? Join us as we dive deep into the United States operations that wiped out a cartel lab in minutes. The Pentagon had 2 options sitting on the table. Option 1 was the F-22 Raptor, basically a flying ghost that can sneak past any radar system on Earth without making a sound. Option 2 was the F-15 Eagle, which is like strapping wings to a weapons warehouse and teaching it how to fly. Most people would pick the invisible jet for a stealth mission like this, but military planners knew something the general public doesn't. Sometimes people need a sledgehammer instead of a scalpel. The Cartel lab wasn't just sitting out in the open waiting to be blown up. These criminals had spent years building an underground fortress with walls thick enough to stop tank shells and bunkers deep enough to survive earthquakes. The F-22 might be invisible, but it can only carry 8 small missiles hidden inside its body, and those tiny weapons would barely scratch the surface of this concrete monster. The F-15, on the other hand, can carry 15 massive bombs on the outside of its wings, bombs specifically designed to punch through the thickest concrete and turn underground bunkers into giant craters. Here's where things get really interesting. The F-15 doesn't need to hide because it has something even better than invisibility. It has electronic warfare systems that make enemy radar stations useless. While the cartel's detection systems were trying to figure out what was happening, the Eagle was jamming their communications, creating fake targets all over their screens, and automatically shooting down any missiles they tried to fire back. By the time they realized what was hitting them, 15 minutes had passed, and their billion-dollar drug empire was nothing but smoking ruins scattered across the jungle floor. This electronic warfare system turned out to be way more valuable than old-school invisibility for this particular mission, and here's why. Stealth fighters like the F-22 become completely visible on radar screens the moment they open their weapon compartments to fire missiles or drop bombs. It's like watching someone try to sneak around in a cloak that disappears the second they reach for their weapon. The F-15 never bothers trying to hide in the first place. Instead, it charges straight in while scrambling every electronic system the enemy has, turning their sophisticated defense networks into expensive paperweights while unleashing enough firepower to level entire buildings. The sheer power of this aircraft is mind-blowing when broken down into simple numbers. Those twin engines produce 58,000 pounds of thrust, which is roughly equivalent to the force generated by a rocket ship during launch. And this massive power allows the plane to carry maximum weapon loads while still flying faster than most enemy fighters can dream of reaching. Think of it like a sports car that can haul a full moving truck's worth of cargo and still outrun everything else on the highway. That's the kind of performance advantage military planners were looking for in this mission. Distance became the final nail in the coffin for the stealth option, because this jungle laboratory was sitting hundreds of miles away from the nearest American airbase, requiring the attack aircraft to fly deep into hostile territory, destroy multiple targets spread across acres of jungle, and make it back home safely without running out of fuel. The F-15's massive fuel tanks and efficient engines provided the endurance needed for this kind of extended combat operation, while the F-22 would have been pushing its range limits just getting to the target area, let alone having enough fuel left for combat maneuvers and the return trip. This drug manufacturing fortress had been pumping out drugs for 3 straight years without anyone finding it, and traditional law enforcement agencies had completely struck out trying to locate the place using normal investigation methods. The military knew they needed something way more powerful than regular detective work, so they sent up the U-2 Dragon Lady, a spy plane that never actually crosses into Mexican airspace because international law forbids that kind of violation. The major breakthrough came from thermal imaging technology that detected something generating massive amounts of heat energy deep under the forest canopy where nothing should be producing that kind of industrial-level temperature signature. Infrared sensors picked up the glow of heavy machinery and chemical processing equipment hidden beneath layers of trees, since cooking drugs requires extremely high temperatures that create a heat footprint visible from space. Ground surveillance teams moved in to confirm what the satellites suspected, with special operations soldiers disguising themselves as hikers and scientific researchers while approaching the target area from multiple directions, planting tiny sensors that could detect chemical odors carried by jungle winds and electronic listening devices that picked up the sound of generators and ventilation systems. The cartel bosses had no clue that American intelligence agencies had spent 6 full months dissecting every single detail of their operation, like scientists studying bacteria under a microscope. Intelligence analysts knew exactly when lab technicians showed up for work, tracked every chemical delivery truck right down to individual shipments of precursor materials, and surveillance teams had counted security guards while documenting their exact patrol patterns hour by hour. The final breakthrough came when the National Security Agency intercepted communications from cartel leaders who thought their encrypted phones were completely secure, not realizing that American computers could crack their supposedly unbreakable codes within a matter of hours. Every phone conversation these criminals had provided military planners with more precise intelligence about the facility's exact location, defensive measures, and daily operations until they possessed what amounted to complete architectural blueprints of the hidden complex. By October, American intelligence knew which specific buildings housed the actual drug-cooking equipment, identified the main chemical storage areas that would create the biggest explosions, and most importantly, had precise global positioning system coordinates for every single structure that needed to be turned into rubble. The hunt phase was officially over, since America's invisible electronic eyes had found their target. But now came the much harder challenge of turning all this intelligence into actual military action. The Oval Office meeting that changed everything lasted 3 intense hours, with President Trump sitting behind the historic Resolute desk, surrounded by his entire national security team, while satellite photographs of the cartel laboratory covered the conference table like pieces of a deadly puzzle. The defense secretary briefed him on various strike options, ranging from surgical precision attacks to complete facility destruction. The Central Intelligence Agency director explained the intelligence breakthrough that had made this opportunity possible, and the Attorney General outlined the complex legal framework needed to authorize military action against what was technically a law enforcement target rather than a traditional military enemy. Trump's decision was absolutely historic in scope and would fundamentally change how America fights the drug war forever. With a single presidential signature, he officially redesignated Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, meaning the Sinaloa Cartel and Jalisco New Generation Cartel suddenly faced the exact same legal status as the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria and Al-Qaeda terrorist networks. This wasn't just paperwork or political posturing. This was a formal declaration that unlocked America's full military arsenal against criminal organizations operating across the southern border, creating terrifying new legal realities where anyone providing material support to these groups now faces 20 years in federal prison, with support definitions stretching far beyond drug trafficking to include paying protection money, transporting goods through cartel territory, or even family members sending money home to relatives in cartel-controlled areas. The entire situation created a massive legal nightmare because this cartel laboratory was sitting squarely on Mexican soil, meaning any American military strike would completely violate international law without getting official permission from Mexico City first. Traditional diplomatic negotiations would drag on for months while Americans kept dying from fentanyl overdoses every single day. So Trump decided to skip the slow diplomatic dance and go straight for Mexico's economic jugular instead. The ultimatum hit Mexican officials like a sledgehammer on a cold January morning when it arrived through diplomatic channels, giving Mexico until February to completely crush the cartels or face devastating 25% tariffs on all imports that would put $400 billion in annual trade at serious risk. President Claudia Sheinbaum found herself staring at an absolutely impossible choice during her emergency cabinet meeting, with her foreign minister spreading satellite photographs across the conference table that showed American military assets gathering along the border like storm clouds. Predator drones had quietly relocated to forward operating bases in Texas and Arizona, making it crystal clear that this threat wasn't just about economics. This was about Mexico's very survival as an independent nation. The message from Washington was brutally simple: deliver real results against the cartels, or watch Mexico's entire economy get crushed under the weight of American economic warfare. While Sheinbaum publicly denounced American threats and maintained Mexico's proud stance of independence, her intelligence chief was secretly authorizing expanded cooperation with Central Intelligence Agency surveillance operations, creating a stark contradiction that was both deliberate and dangerous. Mexican officials desperately hoped this delicate balancing act would prevent unilateral American military strikes while still preserving their national dignity on the world stage. But then came the most unprecedented gambit in the entire drug war. Mexico loaded 29 high-profile drug lords onto planes headed for 8 different American cities in what amounted to the most desperate diplomatic move in decades, including Rafael Caro Quintero, whose brutal 1985 assault of Drug Enforcement Administration agent Enrique Camarena had poisoned relations between both countries for generations. This mass extradition was completely unprecedented, since Mexico typically hands over prisoners one at a time after lengthy legal battles that can drag on for years. But shipping 29 major cartel leaders to America all at once sent a clear signal that Mexico was absolutely terrified of facing economic punishment. A former Drug Enforcement Administration operations chief called it historic evidence of Mexico's desperation to avoid having their economy destroyed by American tariffs. Trump responded by announcing a 30-day suspension of the threatened trade penalties, but this reprieve came with strict conditions that Mexico had to meet or face even worse consequences down the road. Mexico agreed to deploy thousands of additional troops to cartel territories and dramatically intensify military operations against fentanyl production facilities. But the crisis had already awakened something far more dangerous than diplomatic pressure. Deep in the Mexican jungle, American surveillance technology had painted the target with invisible electronic crosshairs, and while diplomatic negotiations had bought some precious time, the cartel laboratory kept cooking deadly chemicals while Pentagon war planners prepared for their ultimate test of military precision. The mission required absolutely perfect timing because launching too early would expose the aircraft to dawn light that would make them visible to enemy spotters, while attacking too late risked morning cloud cover that might completely obscure their targets and ruin the entire operation. Each pilot had spent 3 intensive weeks studying satellite images until they could identify every single building from memory, while flight simulators recreated the exact terrain features, weather conditions, and approach angles they would encounter during the real attack. These aviators practiced the attack run dozens of times until muscle memory completely took over their responses, knowing there would be absolutely no second chances once they crossed into Mexican airspace, and the Pentagon chose GBU-39 small-diameter bombs for their surgical precision and ability to minimize collateral damage to surrounding areas. Each F-15 Eagle fighter jet carried exactly 2 precision bombs, creating a devastating total of 24 weapons for the entire strike mission. And these smart bombs use global positioning system guidance that could hit targets within 3 feet of their intended impact point. Laser designators provided crucial backup targeting systems in case satellite signals got jammed or disrupted during the attack, while Pentagon legal teams worked around the clock preparing thick stacks of justification documents that would explain this military action to Congress and international courts. Military lawyers cited the exact same legal frameworks America had used for terrorist camp strikes in Pakistan and Yemen, pointing to the cartel's new terrorist designation as providing clear legal authority for cross-border military action. Mexico's complete failure to eliminate this deadly threat despite months of diplomatic agreements and promises created solid legal grounds for American self-defense action under international law, which specifically allows cross-border strikes against imminent threats to national security. Pentagon mission planners faced absolutely impossible constraints because the strike had to completely destroy the laboratory while avoiding any civilian casualties that could create an international incident. And intelligence reports showed the facility operated with a skeleton crew during pre-dawn hours when most workers went home to sleep. Timing the attack for exactly 4 in the morning would minimize any potential loss of life while maximizing the destruction of expensive equipment and dangerous chemical stockpiles that could kill millions of Americans. Weather conditions added another critical variable that could make or break the entire mission, since monsoon season brought heavy cloud cover that could completely hide the target from laser-guided weapon systems. Satellite weather forecasts showed an extremely narrow window of clear skies lasting only 2 hours, meaning the strike had to happen within that tight time frame, or military planners would have to wait another full week for favorable weather conditions. Communication security required complete radio silence until the moment weapons were actually released, with pilots navigating using only global positioning system coordinates and pre-programmed waypoints while maintaining zero voice contact with ground controllers. and no data links that enemy signals intelligence could possibly intercept. Mission commanders spent countless hours running through every possible failure scenario they could imagine, asking themselves what would happen if Mexican air defense systems detected the incoming formation of American fighters. The F-15 pilots carried air-to-air missiles for self-defense purposes, but had received strict orders to avoid any engagement unless directly threatened by enemy aircraft, while abort procedures required the entire formation to return home with weapons unexpended rather than risk hitting the wrong target and creating an international catastrophe. The strike force would operate as complete electronic ghosts until the exact moment bombs began falling from the sky, turning a billion-dollar drug empire into smoking rubble within a matter of minutes. The stakes were absolutely enormous because success would eliminate a major source of fentanyl that was killing thousands of Americans every month while demonstrating decisive action against cartel terrorism. But failure could trigger a massive diplomatic crisis with Mexico that might lead to economic retaliation or complete political upheaval between the two countries. Any civilian casualties would completely undermine America's moral authority on the world stage and strengthen anti-American sentiment across all of Latin America, potentially turning allies into enemies for generations to come. Intelligence updates kept arriving every single hour from surveillance assets that were monitoring the target around the clock, with satellite photographs confirming normal activity patterns, heat signatures showing the laboratory operating at full capacity, and guard rotations following completely predictable schedules that indicated business as usual at the billion-dollar drug facility. The final mission briefing took place at exactly midnight, with pilots receiving updated weather reports, precise target coordinates, and rules of engagement that would govern every aspect of the attack. Each aviator signed official documents acknowledging the highly classified nature of this operation, while base security immediately locked down the entire facility with 0 phone calls allowed, no internet access permitted, and absolutely no communication with the outside world until after mission completion. At exactly 2 in the morning, ground crews began their final preparations by loading and arming weapon systems, topping off fuel tanks to maximum capacity, and checking aircraft systems twice to ensure everything worked perfectly. At 4 in the morning sharp, 12 F-15 Eagle fighters lifted off into complete darkness, carrying America's deadliest message toward a target that had no idea death was approaching from above. The formation climbed through Mexican airspace like predators hunting their prey, maintaining absolute radio silence as they approached the rugged Sinaloa Mountains, while their advanced engines sent threats that radar screens across Mexico couldn't detect. Advanced electronic warfare technology made these heavily armed fighters completely invisible to ground-based detection systems, creating the perfect conditions for a surprise attack that would catch the enemy completely off guard. 24 bombs dropped simultaneously from external weapon racks, with absolutely no smoke trails marking their descent and no warning sirens announcing the incoming destruction that was about to turn a billion-dollar drug empire into scattered rubble. The weapons simply vanished into the jungle darkness like invisible harbingers of death, guided by satellite signals toward their program coordinates, while cartel workers below continued their deadly business, completely unaware that their world was about to explode. The first explosion completely shattered the main chemical storage building, causing industrial tanks containing thousands of gallons of dangerous precursor chemicals to erupt in massive orange flames that lit up the forest canopy like artificial daylight, followed by secondary blasts as stored materials ignited and sent toxic smoke billowing through the trees in every direction. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.